Yes guys, welcome back to another Fantasy Football Fix YouTube video. My name is FPL Nacho, and in today's video we are looking at the top transfers going into game week 5. We have got a lot of injury concerns in the shape of Watkins and Alexander Isak, so we're going to discuss those players and the best players that you should bring in if they are ruled out. As always, if you look forward to today's video, make sure you do drop a like and of course smash that subscribe button. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. So first up, as I mentioned, the theme of the opening part is going to be all about forwards, and I really think that is the direction that a lot of managers are taking going into game week 5. We spoke about Alexander Isak's situation. Now, a lot of managers did move away from him in game week 4, so congratulations to anybody that did sell him, because if you didn't see, he ended up coming off at halftime with an injury. We don't really know the extent of it right now, and I always urge managers, if you haven't made a move right now, please do hold off until we get some clarification on the Friday's press conference. But let's be real, Eddie Howe historically is a bit of a pain for telling the truth, so we might not actually get any full clarification regarding Alexander Isak. But in the opportunity that we do, we need to look at some options available. And first up, I want to take a look at some players that are priced around the same bracket of Alexander Isak's 8.4 million. We will be taking a look at some budget enabling forwards later on in this video, so stick around for that. So the three players that we're taking a look at are going to be Spurs' Dominic Solanke, Arsenal's Kai Havertz, and Aston Villa's Ollie Watkins, all offering brilliant opportunities to go to them in game week 5 and onwards. So first up, I want to quickly touch on Ollie Watkins, of course, being the most expensive at 8.9 million, so you need a bit of money in the bank. Now, there are a few concerns about Ollie Watkins being pictured with an ice pack around his ankle in the Champions League game against Young Boys. Now, what we've seen right now, it doesn't suggest that it is a new injury for Watkins. We all know that he has been playing with a slight knock, playing 60-65 minutes pretty much every game. And it sounds like that was just a precautionary substitution, and he isn't necessarily a doubt for the weekend. But again, similar to the Isak situation, we need to monitor the press conferences to see whether he is available. The problem with Watkins right now is that everybody wants to own him. Look at his underlying numbers right now. 3.73 expected goals in 4 games is ridiculous. Only second best to, of course, Erling Haaland. XA, expected assists of 0.9 and 10 shots. So the shot volume's there. He's getting the big opportunities in this Aston Villa team. And really, you've only had the big haul in game week 4. People who have owned him in the first 4 game weeks can count themselves unlucky, because he could have hauled in any of the opening 3 games prior to that game in game week 4. And you can see here, in terms of the expected FPL points, 28.64. He is actually massively underperforming his underlying numbers. And again, when we take a look at the fixture for them in game week 5 at home against Wolves, followed by Ipswich, Man United and Fulham, it is a brilliant opportunity to invest in someone like an Ollie Watkins. Whether you're wildcarding in game week 6, you can have the Wolves at home game. If you're looking to invest in him long term, you've got those brilliant long term fixtures. The problem, of course, with him is the slight knock that he's carrying. I fully expect him to continue getting 60 to 70 minutes. And the problem with John Duran coming off the bench and delivering every time means, whereas last season Unai Emery didn't really have a choice, he now has a brilliant alternative to Ollie Watkins. So he can actually turn Watkins into what was before a 90-minute man, now a rotation risk for FPL managers. So we need to decide whether the rotation risk is actually worth it over the other options available, because Dominic Solanke is a very difficult player to come to any conclusion to right now. He's only played 2 Premier League games. Of course, the injury taking him out of game weeks 2 and 3. So the minutes here of what we're looking at aren't really enough to come to any conclusion. But he is the cheapest at 7.5 million. 0.44 in those 2 games that he has played. And it's worth noting, one of those was up against Arsenal, where, let's be real, the best defence in the league by far, with the likes of Gabriel and Saliba. So we're not really coming to any conclusions right now on Solanke based on his game week 4 performance. But what we can see is the performance of Spurs as a team, and they really did struggle against Arsenal in the final third. Now, will that be the case once again in game week 5 at home against Brentford? I don't think necessarily. Now, Brentford put in a great performance against Man City, only keeping it to 2-1 the scoreline, and that could be a difficult day at the office for Spurs. But if you look for a differential in the game, again, maybe a 1-week punt or a long-term option, Solanke does definitely tick those boxes, but we are buying right now a player that hasn't had any points delivered, and it is a little bit of a risk naturally going for a player like that. Finally, Kai Havertz, 1.94 expected goals, 0.59 expected assists, 10 shots, brilliant underlying numbers, and coming in at 8.1 million, slightly cheaper than Ollie Watkins. Now, Game week 5 just isn't really the entry point for Kai Havertz. Away against Man City, it just doesn't really feel like the best time to be moving in Alexander Isak. If we get no clarification on Alexander Isak's injury status, I'd much rather just keep him for this game week than bring in Kai Havertz. However, you absolutely do need to have Kai Havertz on your radar from game week 6 onwards. Leicester at home followed by Southampton at home. While double Arsenal defence probably is the logical move, that feels like goals in those two games. And while Arsenal do score set pieces, I feel like maybe trying to go for the double Arsenal attack over that period probably has the highest upside. So if you're in a position right now where Isak's ruled out, you maybe have a Muniz as well in your team and other injuries, maybe just going Kai Havertz in game week 5, while it's not optimal, gets you put in place for the longer term perspective. But of course, if you're wildcarding in game week 6, then Havertz isn't an option at all. So to conclude, I think if Watkins does look like he is available, even if he does play 60 to 70 minutes, those fixtures coming up are fantastic. So I still would probably have Watkins as my number 1 pick, but it all comes down to what we hear in the press conference. Otherwise, if you want a 1 week punt, I really do like Dominic Solanke at home against Brentford. The Havertz move, unless your team is in tatters and you just need to bring in a player who is going to give you guaranteed minutes, that one can wait until game week 6, where I think he's a brilliant double up with the likes of Bukayo Saka. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Isak, wait until that press conference where hopefully we get some news. So next up, we need to talk about some budget forwards in the game, because these two here are picking up a lot of traction in the community. There are transfers coming in. I can't believe it, it's 2024, and we're talking about Jamie Vardy still to this day. But there definitely is some logic behind the transfers in for him. And of course, Calvert-Lewin, a player that I think we always like, but his injury record speaks for itself, and he's always a concern when you are bringing him in. So first and foremost, the two big caveats. Calvert-Lewin's injury history, yes, it is a narrative and you might just keep telling yourself that and it never comes, but historically, he does get injured. And Jamie Vardy, let's be real, isn't young anymore. 35, 37, I believe. He is not going to play every single minute of every single game over these next 4 game weeks. Let's just be real. This guy is going to play for Leicester 100%, but I can't see him being a 90-minute man week in, week out. So if you're in a position right now where maybe you own a Muniz and you're looking to downgrade to a cheaper alternative, because Fulham's Muniz looks like he is now massively a rotation risk, and I do think he will be benched in game week 5. DCL, 5.9 million, Vardy at 5.7 million, pretty similar price points. And in terms of the expected goals, Calvert-Lewin is leading the way at 1.32 compared to Jamie Vardy's 0.74. Calvert-Lewin also leading in shots, expected assists, and general expected FPL points. So all the kind of underlying numbers do lean towards Calvert-Lewin. And in terms of actually investing in a team for the fixtures coming up, obviously they play one another in game week 5, so it's very difficult to determine which team you actually would like in that fixture. Obviously with Everton's, they got Leicester followed by Palace, Newcastle and Ipswich, whereas Jamie Vardy has a difficult game week 6, but with the price of 5.7, you probably would be able to just stash him away for 1 game week and then play him in the Bournemouth and Southampton fixtures. So really, I think just Everton have the better fixtures, because you could realistically start Calvert-Lewin in all of those games. But Jamie Vardy is a brilliant 1 week punt, especially if you are looking to wildcard in game week 6. And I think that's a big thing right now. Managers need to understand exactly when their wildcard period is. You don't need to know the exact game week, but you need to know whether you want to do it in game week 6 or not. Because if that is the case, I do think Jamie Vardy at home against this Everton team who are struggling defensively could be a brilliant differential for your sides. But if you're maybe looking a bit longer term and you're looking to have somebody for game weeks 5 to game weeks 8, I feel a bit more confident investing in someone like a Calvert-Lewin. Yes, he does have a history pass, but for me, I think until he actually does get injured, we need to keep him in our minds as a good option at 5.9 million. So for me, Calvert-Lewin is the long-term option. He's a great short-term option, but if you are guaranteeing yourself a wildcard in game week 6, I do like the opportunity of having Jamie Vardy for 1 game week in isolation. So let me know your pick of the two in the comment section. Be really interested to know. I think one of these two could be making it into my team this week. So talking about cheap enablers, we got to take a look at the midfielders in the game, because some managers are trying to save some money in their teams to change the structure of it if they do not have a wildcard available. And it's also worth noting, if people are wildcarding in game week 5 or game week 6, those players that we were really excited about, the Morgan Rogerses at 5.1, Smith Rowes, maybe are getting a bit out of fashion right now. So we need to know who the new kids on the block are going to be. And pretty much it's these three here. Everton's McNeil, Aston Villa's Onana, and Bournemouth's Semenyo. It's also worth noting Tavernier has also been a brilliant pick at Bournemouth, but I want to pick out Semenyo in particular because he has been fantastic in the opening 4 game week. So you can check out the numbers here. Semenyo and Onana with 2 goals apiece, McNeil with 1. But in terms of chance creation, McNeil has been fantastic at 2.14 compared to Semenyo's 1.67. And basically Onana has just been a wrecking ball in terms of set pieces. Isn't really offering any much creativity in that Aston Villa team. He is very much the destroyer, box to box, and very much a threat from set pieces. And we can also see the expected FPL points. Semenyo leading the way naturally because he's so dominant in the expected goals column. But in terms of actual FPL points, it is McNeil that's leading the way at 22, Onana at 21, and Semenyo at 20. So all three of these I really do think are viable options. In terms of Onana, I think there's a big discussion right now in the community about Onana versus Morgan Rogers. Morgan Rogers is the one that everybody went for, but Onana is basically everything we wanted from Morgan Rogers as a pick. And when we do look at the underlying numbers in terms of the two, Onana is currently leading the way, but from an eye test perspective, Morgan Rogers is always the one that's picking up the better spots in the team. And controversially, I still prefer Morgan Rogers in this Aston Villa team, but Onana, end of the day, is the one that's delivering points week in, week out for Aston Villa. But do I think it's sustainable underlying numbers? The answer is going to be no from a personal perspective, but do let me know in the comments. So if we're looking to buy for game week 5 or game week 6 onwards, we need to take a look at the fixtures, because at the end of the day, fixtures are king. We spoke about Everton previously. This is a good time to buy Everton. I know team itself, and in terms of the results, have been really, really poor, but in isolation, I think Calvert-Lewin and McNeil are considerations for your team. We spoke about the fixtures as a great entry point this week if you're in a position where you're looking to move sideways or down from one of your midfielders in the game. Now, in terms of Aston Villa, again, we spoke about Ollie Watkins and his fixtures coming up. The one thing I didn't note is the Champions League return. Now, they've, of course, had their game against Young Boys. The next game is going to take part between game week 6 and 7. So that is going to be a consideration for FPL managers as well. Could that have an impact on the Premier League minutes of some key players like Watkins and Onana? We don't really know the answer right now. But again, you are taking that risk if you are prioritising an Onana who has European football compared to the other 2 options that we are looking at here. In terms of Semenyo, this is a very difficult one because he isn't going to be a buy for you in game week 5 away against Liverpool. Bournemouth have been great, by the way, and I do expect them to cause problems for that Liverpool defence. But would I be buying Semenyo this week? The answer is going to be no. But if you were wildcarding in game week 6 or even looking at a transfer, Semenyo looks fantastic with Southampton at home and Leicester away. And again, with the combinations of your team, you could just find a way of benching him if you wanted to when he plays Arsenal at home, and then look bringing him back in the team later down the line. So in terms of the options for game week 5 in isolation, I'm going to rule out Semenyo. That is a game week 6 pick. I actually do prefer McNeil over Onana just because I think his game time is absolutely locked in. I think the fixtures are equally as good as Aston Villa's, and there is no European football that we need to contend with. Fatigue, minutes extra for the players are inevitably going to have an impact later down the line. So McNeil is my choice. I can't believe I'm saying that out loud, but I do think he's a good option for game week 5 onwards if you want to bring another Everton into your teams. So finally, we need to take a look at the game week 5 predicted points. And to be honest with you, this is probably the most important one of the season so far, because whereas in previous game weeks we've had some clear out and out picks, and that's going to continue in the graphic that you can see here. This is a big game week for those managers that don't own Mo Salah, because whereas in previous weeks Salah and Haaland both had fantastic fixtures, and it basically was whichever one you have, captain him because it makes complete sense. This week, a little bit more different. Now, Mo Salah has a brilliant fixture at home against Bournemouth. I think it's a tough game, but Bournemouth defensively are definitely there to be got at. And Mo Salah, rightly so, if you own him, should be your captain going into game week 5, especially based on the predicted points at 7.3. But it's for those managers, including myself, that don't own Mo Salah where the problems are going to arise, because Man City, of course, at home against Arsenal, I back Erling Haaland in any fixture, but historically, this fixture has been very, very close. 1-0s, a lot of 0-0s. And if there ever is a defence that is going to stop the run of Erling Haaland, it is going to be the combination of Saliba and Gabriel. So we need to remember that this is a big week for captaincy if you do not own Mo Salah. So for those managers that are maybe taking the risk on Ollie Watkins' fitness, you could be rewarded with a captaincy on him. 6.4 predicted points is really, really solid. And again, do I think he'll get as many minutes as Haaland? No. Haaland is definitely the minutes pick, but you do feel like Watkins for 70 minutes probably has the same level as Haaland for the 90 against Arsenal. So if you're going for Watkins and bringing him in, I actually really do like him as a pick in your FPL teams. But again, even though Erling Haaland is playing against Arsenal, the numbers are still decent at 5.9 predicted points. So if you are in a position where no other option looks great, just stick it on Erling Haaland. All it takes is a penalty, or the form that he's in right now. Would you be surprised if he delivered in that game? I think the answer is going to be no. So Haaland is still a good pick. Is he the best? No, there still are much better options out there. Outside of the top 3, we got Palmer at 5.1 million. A little bit concerning in the last game, but I still think he is a great option if you do own him in a good differential. Eze at 5, Trent, Diaz, Jota, Alisson making up the quartet of Liverpool players. Finally, Son at 4.6 million, 4.6 predicted points, who I actually think is quite a good differential this week against Brentford. It does feel like one of those fixtures where Son could deliver. But again, let me know in the comment section if you are captaining somebody in game week 5 other than Mo Salah. Let us know, because I'll be really interested, because it is a very difficult week for captaincy. So that's going to wrap up today's Game Week 5 top transfers video. Really hope it's provided some value. And again, let me know in the comments, who is your transfer going into this week? Or are you maybe looking to roll the transfer with an eye on a wild card in Game Week 6? As always, if you did enjoy the video, make sure to drop a like and smash that subscribe button. I will see you in the next video. Take care. Cheers.